And hello again, everybody. This is Jerry Serino of From the Median Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I always ask you, please go to Cleveland Right to Life on all of the various social media pages. Follow us there and like and even reply and make some comments. We're getting lots and lots of comments on all of our posts. Some are good, most are good, but you get your occasional interesting ones. I'll just use that word. And then please, subscribe to the podcast and on any podcast app and go to fromthemedian.org as well. We would appreciate engagement. I hope you are happy with the great guests that I am bringing or we are bringing to the show. And I have yet another one. Hannah Cruz is an author, a speaker, a fellow podcaster, and she is here to share all the wonderful things that she's doing. Hannah, thanks for being here.
Jerry, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to start with a little bit about you.
Mhm.
You're a podcaster. We could talk about your podcast, the Lighten Up Podcast.
Mhm.
Hopefully, everyone goes and subscribes as well. Tell me a little bit about you personally, as much as you're able to and willing to share with everybody here.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I love Jesus. I'm like obsessed. I'm totally obsessed with Jesus. He's like everything to me, has been since I was a very little girl. So there's this hunger and this passion that is just unquenchable, as far as my relationship with the Lord goes, because obviously we know that we're really only alive for this long. What are we going to do with this? The reason we're alive is to share the gospel. So that's really the firm foundation of which I was raised on. I'm so grateful for it. And I'm a wife. I have two beautiful kids. I've been married to my husband now for 13 years, been together for 14. And so we're really just really thriving in our life right now. It's been awesome. Really awesome watching these kids grow up. I've got two dogs, but I do have a background in television and in news and studied all of this stuff in high school and in college. And so naturally, whenever the social media came around, working in news was not something that was conceivable for our family anymore as somebody who was trying to raise little babies. And so I took to social media and started using my things that I started learning in school. I started using it there on social media, and then podcasting came around. So now I'm a podcaster and a social media person. So really just using all the gifts and the talents that the Lord has bestowed upon us is very important to further the kingdom of God. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's if you want to follow or connect with Hannah, you can go Lighten Up is the podcast and her page, Hannah Cruz. Just search that way on any
Yeah.
social media and you'll find Hannah there as well. So I'd encourage everybody to please do that. You have some really great content
Thank you.
as well, and I think it's great. So you're also an author.
Mhm.
Tell me about you. So your book is called. Well, I'll let you
Yeah,
share
I
all the
wrote 2
specifics.
women's devotionals back in the day. So
Okay.
one was called Goodness Gracious 90 Unfiltered Devotions for the Sometimes Too Serious Life. And then the next year, I wrote one called A Confidence That Changes Everything. Both of them are geared towards just encouraging women to find the joy of the Lord despite their circumstances, because I do have a crazy testimony. I'm not somebody that has had a perfect life. There's been horrible things, hard things, wild things that have happened. But obviously, we do know that despite our circumstances, the Lord will always work things together for good. And so I really do talk about that a lot in my first devotional, Goodness Gracious, the pink one.
Mhm.
And then I wrote another one called The Confidence That Changes Everything. And that is finding confidence in who you are in Christ after crazy things happen, because sometimes that makes us insecure. Sometimes it makes us feel like we're not worthy of who we truly are in Christ. And obviously, that's not God's best for us. It's just simply not. And so there's both of those devotionals that are out. They're fun, they're lighthearted, they've got kind of a
Mhm.
humor twinge to it because that's kind of my MO. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those are 2 things that we love talking about on our platforms. And you can find those on Amazon. You can find them anywhere.
Yeah, hannahcruzblog.com if you want to go there. This will all be on from the Median
Yeah.
site as well. But Hannah Cruz, HANNAH, for those that aren't watching and instead are listening. Which, by the way, if you want to watch, go to YouTube, Cleveland Right to Life, and you can watch all these videos. And you could sometimes I always wonder if people are who are only listening
I
are always
know.
curious as to what I look like or what the guests
Yeah.
look like, and so going to Rumble or YouTube will get you all that. And
Mhm.
as well. And by the way, since speaking of video or images, searching you, and you're out there online, as you
Mhm.
said, beautiful family. I
Thank
saw
you.
some pictures of it. Wonderful family.
Mhm.
What you had mentioned some difficult things in your life.
Mhm.
What, if anything, are you willing to share about that?
Yeah, I think the main thing, and I go and I speak about this quite a bit because sometimes the hard things that we suffer through are the soil that God uses to grow us. And I feel like that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened with me. I grew up in a Christian home, really didn't experience anything hard in my life until high school. Obviously, we know that high school is tough. It's tough
Mhm.
for girls, especially. You fall in love and you get your heart broken. And that's exactly what I did. I was just completely heartbroken after getting broken up with. And my youth pastor, which I didn't know at the time because I had known him for many years, took advantage of my situation and used a time of counseling with me as a time of grooming, which I was kind of unaware of. But whenever you're heartbroken and whenever you're 17 years old and you're young, you're so desperate to feel better that you'll listen to anybody that has any sort of authority over you. And he convinced me to give my innocence in order to experience some sort of spiritual healing. And he stole that from me. And it was a one time thing, thought it would make me feel better, but it didn't. It made me feel crazier. And it led me down a path the next few years of just mistake after mistake and trying to find the healing that I was so desperate for, but knowing that all that did, that whole situation, it just really damaged me even more.
Mhm.
But of course, you don't talk about that stuff. Like it's embarrassing, and I felt stupid for believing that that would help me, realizing very quickly that it didn't. But it's just too shameful to bring up, too shameful to talk about. And so many years later, after I had already gotten married, already had my kids, I told my husband for the first time what had happened to me. And my husband appropriately reached out to my youth pastor and to his wife, asked if this was true. And of course, they admitted it. My youth pastor was like, yes, but that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. And so, in this world of cover up culture that we see in, really in church, if we're being honest, we see this in church, but especially in these evangelical circles, these charismatic circles where there really is no some sort of authority to regulate any of this. It's just covered up because we're trying to protect brand. We're trying to protect the church name. We're trying to protect the person
Mhm.
more than understanding what has happened with the victim and how there could be potentially other people that have been victimized by people in these positions. They completely denied it after they admitted it to my husband. They ended up denying it in a lawsuit that they but we got a knock on our door just shortly after because we did call the church that they were a part of, the school they were a part of, let them know they don't. I mean, this man does not have any business being around anybody underage. We got a knock on the door, got a lawsuit saying that we made the whole thing up. And it was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me because, as somebody who has been subjected by a sicko like that, you fear that very thing. You fear that you're not going to be believed. You fear that people are going to think that you just made this whole thing up. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what happened with this lawsuit. I believe that the intent was to bully us into submission
Yeah.
because we were a very young family. We didn't have any money to fight a lawsuit or anything like that. But my husband is a bulldog. I married a bulldog, and he was so fantastic in working with our lawyer and proving that not only was this undeniably true, but that this man deserved jail time. He really did. But the statute of limitations was up. And so that wasn't possible anymore. Hopefully, that law will be changed at some point. But we were victorious in court. Praise God. So
Yeah.
that was difficult because you're having to relive all of that all over again. Whenever you do finally speak up, but then you have to go to court about it. You're having to tell strangers about what
Mhm.
happened to you. It's a double whammy. It's very, very horrific. And so coming out of a situation like that, it's most of the time that makes you want to just kind of recluse and to not really have much to live for because it is so painful. But my message to women is no matter what you've gone through, a lot of us have gone through stuff like that. I'm not unique in any of this. I'm not a woe is me. Nobody understands. Nobody gets it. No, lots of people have gone through this kind of stuff. We're not unique in it. So we have to step into a place of victory instead of victimhood and realize the Lord's going to use this for good. He is going to. I don't know how. I might not see it right away, but I have to trust that he is good in spite of it. And I also have to trust that he's just, that he's a
Mhm.
just God. And that's exactly what he proved in our situation. It didn't happen without a major amount of suffering. It was hard on my marriage. It was hard on my family. It really turned our lives upside down, but God still can use it again as the soil that causes us to grow. So it's been phenomenal, but that was mainly the biggest thing that like kind of messed me up for a while, but God's really good in spite of it.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for sharing. Obviously, that's not an easy thing as you explained and
Yeah.
bringing it up and rehashing it. It would be easier for you to bury it, right?
Mhm.
How old was this person at the time?
He was like very late 30s when I was
Okay, so he wasn't like
17.
20 and you
Oh,
were 17.
no.
I mean, he
No,
was
he
late
was
30s. Yeah,
married, he had
yeah,
kids, like, I
yeah,
had babysat his kids. I mean, I'd known him since I was 10.
yeah.
This authority figure that you trust and that
Hmm.
is very close with your family. I mean, who are you to even question or go against it? But again, that's the
Yeah.
tough part about, and why we need to be honest about these things, because these circles, these church circles, are sometimes the very places that wolves in shepherd's clothing like to prowl around and to position themselves in these places of authority so that they can take advantage of the vulnerable. And that is what happened. And so we need to be honest about it.
Mhm.
We can't just, put it under the rug because it's embarrassing or we don't want to
Mhm.
hurt anybody else's family. This is very, very important for us to, and I think that this is happening on purpose as a purification of the body of Christ. I think that God is exposing these things on purpose, and a huge shakedown is happening so that we can separate the wheat from the chaff. And I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, as a Catholic, you're speaking my language. Obviously, we've dealt with this, and
Yeah.
I've known, um, not known personally, but known,
Hmm.
people who got messed up and
Yeah.
in both sides of it, I guess.
Hmm.
And it is nobody is angrier than we are when we
Yeah.
hear about these things. I don't know if anyone who's ever defended a youth pastor or a priest or
Mm-mm.
whoever.
Yep.
It is horrible. Now, when you experience this, and I think I always get the perspective, and this is just I have no data behind this,
Hmm.
is I believe that that type of victimhood or that type of what happened to you, let's
Hmm.
let happen to
Yeah.
you, and some people even worse, meaning they're much younger,
Yeah.
even children. I
Hmm.
believe that that has happened way more often in our past, our society, than we really even understand,
Yeah.
and consequently, that is in part what leads to so much evil that occurs in the
Hmm.
future, whether it's drug abuse,
Yes.
whether it's sexual abuse. I
Hmm.
believe there are stats that say people who are victims end up becoming the aggressors
Yes.
potentially, or at least a higher rate. Certainly violence, all sorts of things.
Hmm.
Um, did you feel, not that you did that, but did you feel God abandoned you? Was that a sense that you had at all, or what was the feelings?
I think I felt, I don't think I felt like he abandoned me, but I felt confused. I felt, uh, if I couldn't get a proper answer or properly healed by the person that I trusted the most in my spiritual walk, well, then what's real?
Hmm.
And if I can't trust him, my youth pastor, who I've known for years and who was responsible for helping raise me in the faith, if I can't trust that, well, then I need to figure it out on my own. And
Hmm.
that's what happens. I think we just kind of take everything upon ourselves. And if we're like, well, we didn't find, healing there, I don't feel better over there. So I'm just going to do whatever I want. And that is a perfect open door for sin. And so sin steps in,
Hmm.
and it's an immediate gratification that makes us feel better in the moment, but there's consequences for that later. And we get that so confused because we're human beings. We don't know what the difference is.
Yeah.
And because that's just our origin, we're born into that. And so I don't necessarily feel like God abandoned me, but I did feel like I was floating. I felt like I was floating in between wanting to do right by the Lord and wanting to follow his will, but at the same time being so broken and so confused and without that foundational support that I thought that I had. That foundation was just shaky now.
Yeah.
It was tough. It was definitely tough. And having to do that on your own for so long is also tough. Or if there was any knowledge of it, it's just like, shh, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
Right.
So it does put a lot of pressure on ourselves. But of course, we don't have any sort of sacraments in the non-denominational world that I grew up in. We don't have any sort of physical representation of healing and experiences that we can have with Jesus. It's all kind of invisible. And so that's also tough. I think that made things more difficult for me. And so it's people ask me all the time, they're like, how can you justify becoming a Catholic knowing their history of abuse? And you've gone through that. How could you be a Catholic? And what I've had to do was separate people from theology, people from truth, people from what the church has preserved as biblical truth, historical truth, Christian truth for 2,000 years, separating that from what people do. That is what we all have to do. And if we want to live a theologically sound life and an ancient, true Christian life, well, then we have to separate what people actually, and yeah, there's going to be bad priests. There's going to be bad popes. I mean, there's bad pastors all over the place. They're literally littered all over the place in the evangelical and charismatic world. So we have to separate those two. And once I separated theology from people and noticed that the theological foundation that I had, even though it was precious, it wasn't complete. I found that completion within the Catholic Church. And so I'm just like biting at the bit. I cannot wait to experience the Eucharist. I cannot wait to just become a Catholic one day with you. I think it's going to be awesome to come
so you're on your
home.
way.
I'm
You're
on my
your
way. I'm on my way.
Okay, so you're in
Yes.
the OCIA or what? I don't know.
We start this fall. I feel like I could become Catholic tomorrow at this point. I have, I'm like way up here, but my husband is much slower. He is very like, he just wants to make sure that we're making the right decision, or himself at least. He's like, you can become Catholic if you want, but my desire is for my whole family at the same time to become Catholic at the same time. He doesn't care if I decided to do it tomorrow, but I'm like, no, I want all of us at the same time. So we're going to do OCIA together starting in the fall, my kids, and then we'll all be received in the church whenever the priest thinks it's time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's really fantastic. Hey, if he
Yeah.
wants to, I actually connected with him on social media because you have
Oh,
him
really?
listed. So, yeah, hopefully we can connect
That's
as just as
awesome.
guys.
Yeah.
I'm not a convert. I'm a whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, cradle Catholic or whatever.
Yes.
Imperfect Catholic. I don't know. To your point about there are bad priests, bad popes, and
Mhm.
there's bad pastors in
Yeah.
every denomination. I always think about Judas, right, who did the gravest, most
Yeah.
evil thing imaginable, and he
Mhm.
walked with Jesus for
Yeah.
3 years. He
Yeah.
did miracles. He you know potentially, I mean, it's
Mhm.
indicated that the apostles raised people from the dead and cured the sick. Well, he may have done that,
Yeah. Or
presumably.
baptize people. I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't
he
make
did
that
all
their,
that, and
yeah, it
yet
doesn't make their baptism invalid. Yeah.
yeah, and it doesn't make like, wow, look at this guy. He walked with
Mhm.
this Jesus guy, so Jesus is
It's false.
devalued.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Mm.
course not. So yeah, it's a challenging thing
Yeah.
to face. Okay, so
Mhm.
tell me about your podcast. The Lighten Up Podcast. How did you come up with
Yes.
that name? I mean, you did say that you utilize humor. Is
Yeah.
it from that or?
Yeah, when we originally started the podcast, I wanted to call it Lighten Up because the slogan that I always loved to use on my social media platforms is to lighten up because there is so much joy in Jesus, not to take
Mhm.
ourselves so seriously and to realize that the joy of the Lord is truly our strength. And, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so let's lighten up, people. So we named the
Mhm.
podcast that, also thinking that we would just kind of do funny stuff on the podcast, kind of like what my social media platform was. We really didn't have any sort of direction. My team was just
Mhm.
like, you got to start a podcast. And so we started the podcast thinking it would go that route. But that was the same exact time that I started to research early Christianity, the early church. what's the actual theological truth behind Christianity, because I just started having so many questions about the Bible and the canon of the Bible, and what did the earliest Christians do? How did they worship? Whoa, whenever I started reading it, looking like, this doesn't look like my non-denominational church at all. This is crazy. This actually looks super Catholic. And it was freaking me out, man. It was freaking me out. I'm like, this cannot be right. This can't be right. And so it took me for months and months and months down this road of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning every single day, listening for 6 to 8 hours a day. This sounds so excessive. This sounds like I'm not telling the truth, but this is absolutely the truth. You start looking and researching and reading and watching debates and realizing all of these things that you just simply were ignorant about concerning the roots of original Christianity, and you can't get enough. I couldn't get enough. It was just like I was taking all of this in with a fire hose instead of a garden hose, trying to figure out the bottom truth here, because I felt like for my whole life I was just getting crumbs, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew something was missing. And so asking these questions led me down this early church path, which eventually led me to realizing the Catholic Church is true. This is where it's always been. This is what my heart has always been longing for, is Jesus in the Eucharist. And I slowly started to introduce this on the podcast, be like, guys, this is what's going on. And so I started a whole series on the show called What's Up with This Catholic Thing, and just asking these questions. And it's just kind of exploded from there. Not expecting any of that. It's just truly what was going on behind the scenes. And I felt like I had to just let everybody know what was happening. And I'm just using the podcast as kind of like an open diary of just figuring these things out, having people on, asking these questions. And it's been phenomenal. Really has.
Yeah, love it. And this is not an explicitly Catholic show, although I am. No. I'm glad you're talking about it. I've had people on specifically sharing their conversion story.
Yeah.
And I have non-Catholics on all the time when we talk about all these topics.
Yeah.
So no, it's wonderful that you are, but I love that story. Now, who
I think it might. I think it's going to be part of like the whole vein of the podcast anyway, because this is now a part of my life, a major part of my life. And it's a part of my life that cannot be ripped away. Once you see the truth and once you know what you know, you can't go back to what you didn't know. And so I've made that real clear with my team and with even my listeners. I'm like, this is it, guys. I mean, you're always going to be seeing some part of this either in the podcast or now on my social media platforms, because you cannot deny that kind of truth.
It's just who you are.
Yeah.
Who when you say you were listening 6-8 hours a day, who were you listening to and reading, if you could share?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like now at this point it's been dozens of different titles as far as books go. I mean, I read all the Brant Petrie books. I read the Rome Sweet Home, the Dr. John Bergsma. I mean, gosh, like the conversion stories in books by Patrick Madrid, so many different, Fulton Sheen. I mean, I'm reading all of these different titles, at least trying to, in my mind, I'm like, I need to debunk the Catholic ideologies that I think are wrong. So I'm reading all these things, trying to debunk it, and then realizing, oh, wow, it actually lines up with the early church. Read the early church fathers, who obviously on YouTube, constantly watching debates between Trent Horn and other Protestant apologists. It was just a very, very constant thing. It was nonstop. If I was cooking, I was listening. If I was folding laundry, I was watching Bishop Robert Barron on the TV with his Catholicism documentary. I mean, it was just everything constantly. And so it's hard for people to understand, but whenever you get your teeth sunk into some sort of truth that is ancient and you've never seen this before, it's just like, I have to have more. Like I have to have more. It's wild.
Amazing. I know all those authors, and I'm sure that there's probably a dozen more.
So many more.
That we, I always say when people ask me stuff like that, I'm always afraid to give names because I won't be able to include everybody who's been influential,
right,
in this on this topic.
Well, and you have to understand too, it's like sometimes people ask you these questions and they expect you to answer in a soundbite, because we're so like, give me the answer. And it's so much more nuanced than that. That's why I try to explain to people, no, this is not this flighty decision, happen on the fly. It was just like a one day I felt this way and the next day. No, this was grueling. This was, toiling over this stuff for hours a day, for months at a time. And so it's not like you can just explain this within a couple of sentences. And so
Mhm.
you have to go down the same kind of paths that we did as converts in order to understand why you would leave being a non-Catholic to actually becoming a Catholic. People say, "You're going backwards." It's like, yeah, I'm going backwards. Of course I'm going backwards. I want to go back to the
Yeah.
oldest, most ancient form of the truth. And you're not going to get that if you don't know the oldest, most ancient form of the
Yeah.
truth. And so you have to read it. You have to spend that time, and it takes effort. And we don't like to make effort like that because we're American and we're lazy. And I can be very lazy. So it's out of my character to be this just over the top trying to research, but it's good that that has developed in me because I've found the truth in ways that I could not find before.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very upset that we're out of time. The time absolutely flew by.
Wow, that was
It
fast.
felt like it was 3 minutes, didn't it? And
Yeah.
it was because of you, not me.
Oh,
Love your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Everybody, please follow Hannah Cruz, Lighten Up Podcast. Please connect with her on all social media and on podcast apps. When you're subscribing to From the Median, subscribe to the Lighten Up Podcast as well, and listen and follow to Hannah. Hannah, I'd love to have you back on.
of
This was
course.
a
Yes.
phenomenal conversation, and
Awesome.
maybe include your husband or your whole
Yeah.
family when you guys finally take the plunge, right?
Yes,
Maybe
I
in
would
about a year or
love
so.
that. Yes, absolutely. They would love that so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yes, my pleasure. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of From the Median Podcast. We will see you next time.